Right. Thanks so much for joining us today. So today I'm going to dig into a little bit on how you can dig out the cash from down the back of your data sofa. A weird title, but stay with us. So as an introduction, my name's Brittany. I'm CEO and co-founder of QualisFlow. I'm a civil engineer by background, but I started this company back in 2018 with my co-founder Jade because we really wanted to help the industry build more sustainably. So QFlow enables data-driven, sustainable construction using machine learning and AI to help us capture that data and use it more efficiently. But I want to add value to you guys, so we're going to be really general today. So what we're going to have a look at is how can you make data your most valuable asset? How can you automate that data capture so it's not a painful and time-consuming process? And then how can we also use that data to be more sustainable? So the EU identified that personalised data, so just one class of data, is worth over 1 trillion euros in 2020. So if data is that valuable, why do we use it so little in our industry? Well, it's largely because for us, data is more valueless, and I'll explain why. So PwC breaks down the value of data into 8 areas, and I flipped this around a little bit so we can have a look at some of the challenges as to why in our industry it's much less valuable to us right now. Firstly, it comes down to quality. So our data is quite often inaccurate, it's quite often incomplete, and it's very inconsistent. So ultimately, we have poor quality data in our industry, which makes it less valuable to us. The next thing is that it's often untimely. So we don't get it when we need it, so we can't use it to actually interface with what we're doing, to make change, to actually drive more value in our processes. And then finally, that data is often restricted in the way that we can use it. So it doesn't interact very well with the workflows that we have. It doesn't interact very well with the tools that we have. So quite often we'll do things on paper or in a spreadsheet, or it might be in some really niche hardware system that ultimately we can't get things to integrate very well. And that causes a problem because then actually we can't learn from the different data sets and the sort of space between them. So these are the sort of key 3 areas that we need to tackle as an industry to make that data more valuable to us. The other 2 that PwC highlight is exclusivity and liability of that data. I'm not going to dig into those because it's a whole other area, and I think these are the top 3 areas that really, as an industry, we can make a difference. So let's have a look at quality first. So the McKinsey report, the new normal in construction, highlighted that we waste over $10 billion a year on lost information. So this is because our data is quite often missing in our processes. So a great example of this is in the delivery system. So we have a logistics tool that might log in a delivery, and then when that actually comes to site, it's quite often a piece of paper or a PDF that gets emailed to us that gives us proof of that delivery and any changes that happened last minute, any substitutions. And then that then goes further into some spreadsheet or a centralized reporting system or a procurement system to actually document what's going on. So at each stage of that process, there's the opportunity for that data to get lost, to change, and for us to actually have an incomplete or an inconsistent picture of what's going on. And this just costs us thousands. And I'll go into a little bit more later about some of the hard numbers behind that. So the next thing is that our data is untimely. So this is from a project that had FSC certified timber that it was going for. It was going to have, the whole project was only going to use FSC certified timber. So it was demonstrating those sustainability credentials. But what that resulted in was actually thousands of pounds of wasted money, but also a less sustainable process. And it's all because their data was untimely. So again, what was happening is you'd have this timber delivery come to site, and on that piece of paper, it would say whether the timber that had been delivered actually had FSC certification. So even if they'd procured the right stuff, that might have been subsidised, it might have had to come from a different supplier, or the subcontractor might have got it wrong in terms of the ordering, but ultimately that timber wasn't certified. What happens was that was taken by the logistics contractor, put onto a pile that got typed into a spreadsheet, and eventually, after with monthly reporting, that information made its way back to the environmental advisor on the project. That took 6 weeks. So within those 6 weeks, that timber had been taken, installed in the development, and suddenly they had this dilemma. Okay, we have uncertified timber in the development. Do we rip it out? Or do we leave it in there and risk not getting our certification and not actually meeting our clients' requirements, and therefore potentially being open up to liabilities down the road? So in this instance, because it was such an important case for the client, they decided to take that timber out, which cost them $54,000 in just rework, so the labour and the materials for that. But it also cost them $136,000 in delays, because that timber was on the critical path for other MEP fit out. So one small instance of untimely data resulted in hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of wasted time and money. And then finally, this data being inaccessible and incompatible makes it very hard for us to learn from the space in between. And kind of what I mean by that is you've got your delivery system where you've got the logistics tools where you lock in, what's going to come to site. You've got your procurement system as to what's actually been purchased. And then you've got something like Qflow that actually logs what was actually delivered and what's actually going on the project in real time. Now, if you never link them up, then you've actually got 3 potentially very different pieces of information, and you can't actually see where the errors have come in. So the error might have been with the supplier who decided to sub something out at the last minute because they didn't have that material, or the error might have come in with whoever ordered that information or ordered that material. But unless you have that data and unless you can match up all those pieces, you can't find where the errors in your processes are coming in, and you can't find the opportunities to eliminate those errors and therefore save yourself time and money and to be more sustainable. So what we need is for systems to have a way of communicating with each other. So typically today we use something called an API, and all that is a calling mechanism between 2 systems where they can share data within a certain format. What you'll find with a lot of legacy systems is that they won't have that kind of calling mechanism, or they might be using something more historic like an FTP, where it's only sort of a one-way communication. And that ultimately makes that sort of sharing of data and that sharing of information much harder. And you spend a lot of time taking things into a spreadsheet, manipulating them, uploading them into something else, cutting and pasting. And that sort of time and pain is just unhelpful for the site teams or for your designers, but it also opens up a lot of opportunities for errors in there as well. So as an industry, what we need to be focusing on is getting good quality data, so accurate, complete and consistent, getting the data into the right people's hands at the right time, so being timely, and then making sure that data is accessible and compatible across the systems that we use to manage our workflows. So I'm going to give you one example from what Qflow does, and then what I want you guys to think about is what workflows do you interface with, and where are there opportunities to either improve the quality of your data, improve the timeliness of your data, or improve the compatibility of your data. So what Qflow does is it automates the capturing of material delivery tickets and waste transfer notes going off-site, so that there isn't that time of writing things down or manually typing things into spreadsheet. There's no need for drop-down lists or free text. We use machine learning to extract that information from an image of that paper ticket or from a PDF and make sure that it goes into a usable, compatible format. So we automate taking the pain out. The next thing we do is we then analyse that data in real time to make sure that the important bits of information, any errors, are highlighted in a timely manner to the engineering team on site. So for example, if you've got a waste transfer note that's missing a core piece of information like the EWC code, then a notification is sent directly to the responsible person saying, well, you've had a waste transfer, you're missing this information, and therefore you're at risk of not being able to discharge your duty of care. So we make that data timely. And then the last thing we do is we analyse that information against other data sets. So we look at logistics, cost, programme, and we try and understand where the value is, where the opportunities are for projects to save time, save money, but most importantly for us to be more sustainable. So I'll give you, it seems very intangible, so I'll give you an example of that. So Qflow was deployed on the Old Oak Common demolition site for HS2. And within 3 months, we were able to identify that a small tweak in their waste management process could not only eliminate 1 tonne of carbon emissions over a year, but also save potentially £60,000. So by having this data and looking at the opportunities to change workflows based on this information, allows us to make far more informed decisions and genuinely save costs across a project. So there's a few sort of words of warning or specific opportunities that you need to think about when you're doing this. So firstly, try to automate, not overhaul. Like, sometimes change really is required, but too much change can seriously disrupt site teams and make it actually introduce more errors and upset people as well. So innovation and change needs to be introduced in a sensitive way and really focus on the person who is interacting with that innovation, take a very significant focus on the user. So one thing that we did was we made sure that there were as little sort of requirements for the guys on site to input information. So just taking a photograph, no drop-down list and free text, trying to make it very, very easy. But also really focusing that on the end goal. So when we broke down this workflow, we were looking at where are the errors coming in, where are the real pain points. So the errors were coming in when people were manually inputting information, and also where the information was just getting delayed and it wasn't getting into the right hands at the time. So we focused on fixing those specific parts of the workflow as opposed to trying to overhaul the entire workflow as it is. So we've seen lots of systems like QR codes and barcodes coming in to try and track materials. And they, like, in the long run, they really will be a fantastic tool. But the challenge that they face is that our supply chain is so fragmented and so siloed, they're going to have to change thousands of different workflows as opposed to just focusing on one on the construction site. So this sort of bridging process enables us to achieve the change we want to, which is, quicker, higher quality data, without having to completely disrupt the entire supply chain in such a way that will take years and potentially cause more pain than good. And then the final thing that I really want you guys to think about is that efficiency ultimately makes you more sustainable. So if you're using less resource, if you're generating less waste, only are you being more sustainable, but you're also being more profitable, as that FSC case kind of highlighted. So if you're not really driven by sustainability, like we are, then it doesn't matter. You can still look at implementing these different data processes to try and drive things like profitability and productivity on site as well. So there's a case across all business focuses to really improve the value and quality of your data. So here's some examples of the people that we've been working with. We work with contractors and developers primarily across the UK at the moment, but we are just starting to launch internationally. So if you're interested to find a bit more about what we do specifically with materials and waste data, then obviously feel free to reach out. Or if you just want to ask a question about how you can improve a completely different workflow, but from a data perspective, then I'm obviously happy to talk that through with you and see if we can help. So think about, as a final thought, how can you make your data more valuable? How can you improve the quality through accuracy, completeness, and consistency? How can you make it more timely so it can actually be used to inform decisions? And then finally, how can you make it more accessible and usable by making it compatible with the various systems that you're using? All of that will enable you to make more informed decisions, make you be more sustainable, and reduce the pain that you have on site with capturing that data. So thank you very much for joining us today. If you want to find out any more, do feel free to reach out to me on the email address below or look us up on qualisflow.com. Thanks very much.